1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast sound test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast sound check. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Royal Blue Podcast. It's the Monday show. It's the first show after the Aston Villa defeat. We are live, and I am your host, Ian Croll. Joining me on today's show, we have Everton FC reporter Chris Beesley. Chris, how are things? All good?
Well, I'm not too sure about that one. I think, yeah, same as everyone else. Yeah.
Cool, good to have you on. I didn't know where to go there. I didn't know where to transition, to be honest.
I don't need to say anything, do I?
Yeah, obviously.
I'm good to be on.
Sat next to me is Gav Buckland. Gav, all good?
From an Everton perspective now, obviously, as we will discuss,
absolutely
generally okay though.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it, and it's going to be an interesting show. Before we do get into it, we got a major plug to announce. We've just tweeted it out now, so if you just join on the stream, then you're in good time because we've got a special announcement, which I'm going to pass over to Chris before the big reveal. Yeah. We got a very special guest on the Royal Blue Podcast, Chris, for the latest episode of Goodison Park, My Home. Do you want to reveal?
Yeah, it's a rare piece of good news about Everton, certainly from our point of view. I know Ian and I sort of teased this a little bit, alluded to it last week. We said we were trying to reel in a big one, and for Goodison Park, My Home, and we certainly have done. We've got as you may have seen already on X or Twitter, as it used to be called, we've got the longest serving and most successful Everton manager of the Premier League era, David Moyes. He's our 9th guest on Goodison Park, My Home, and we're absolutely delighted that David took the time out to speak to us. I know Ian was mentioning it online last week. We were on our way to an unspecified location, heading north up the M6. Yeah, somebody got a bit confused and mentioned Stoke. I don't know if they passed A-level geography, met up with Mr. Moyes at an unspecified location in Lancashire, and it's an absolute cracker, as you might imagine. That's going to be published later this week. Ian probably have the details on that one, but yeah, over an hour there talking to David Moyes about his 11 years stint at Goodison Park. The times when he nearly came back, all those magical memories from that time there, from 2002 to 2013, and all that goes with that. So look out for that one.
Yeah, so it's going to be on both platforms, video and audio, and Thursday, I think we've said, haven't we? And you've going to have a piece in the paper as well. So he was certainly in good spirits, and back from America as well, wasn't he?
Obviously, he loves it. He loves it there, doesn't he? Yeah, travelled. Obviously, he's working at the moment as a Europa technical observer, similar role, I think, to what Gareth Southgate does. But yeah, he was in fine fettle, and it's probably worth noticing he's slightly taller than Ian imagined. He was standing tall there, and it took Ian aback somewhat.
Yeah, he walked into the room, and I don't consider myself massive or small, but he was well taller than me, wasn't he? So it took me back.
Well, it's funny because when I met Wenger the other week, And like he was far taller than what I'd imagined. He was taller than me. Like,
and you're saying you're a big man,
yeah, he was.
Yeah, you're tall.
Yeah, he was tall and slim, and it was people. I think people in the public eye, they carry themselves well, don't they? I think that's the part of it, isn't it, as well?
The swagger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big fan of David Moyes, obviously, at the time.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I love Moisey.
Okay, well, that is going to be published on Thursday, so keep an eye out for that on all our audio as well as YouTube, Royal Blue channels and platforms. The usual plugs, just give this video a like, thumbs up, and also subscribe to the channel. You get a notification if you do so anytime we upload a video. And as mentioned, we are live, so join the debate and get the comments in and get your opinions in. I'm sure there's going to be plenty. There's loads already coming in. Okay, well, the agenda, it's obviously Villa reaction. We're going to discuss that, as well as how much pressure Sean Dyche is actually on or under. And we'll also, look ahead to Southampton. Another game straight away off the bat. So, interesting, yeah. So, Chris, we'll go for initial reactions first. You obviously did a post-match reaction video at Villa Park immediately after the game. Joe did one as well. I did one. So, if you want to watch that on the YouTube channel, you can do. There's 3 videos there for you to watch if you haven't already. But 2 days since the defeat, has anything changed from your initial reaction, or?
It's strange because it was so different to the Bournemouth one. As much as you could say, the history books will show that Everton lost 2 consecutive fixtures 3-2 after leading 2-0, but they were very different circumstances. Unfortunately, you could kind of see it coming. It was slow motion, unlike the Bournemouth one where it was the sucker punches at the end. I don't think, unfortunately, Everton were ever entirely in control of the game. But again, what it does show, it's very different. Obviously, Aston Villa team have great last year or so. They're in the Champions League for the first time, competing for the European Cup for the first time in their history, other than the one time that they won it. And they're very much an upwardly mobile outfit, and we knew it was going to be tough for Everton. And I guess, in a way, it probably would have been much easier if it had just been like a sort of a routine 2-0 win for Villa, wouldn't it? And I think people, the emotion wouldn't have been there that, having got themselves 2-0 up. But, saying that, huge chance for Dominic Calvert-Lewin to make it 3-1. And I've spoken to Michael Ball this morning doing his column, and to be fair, he mentions that Ollie Watkins had other big chances himself, so you can't just look at the Everton chances. But for us looking in there from an Everton point of view, the fact that Dom, he played well, he'd got his second goal in 2 games, and he's 1-on-1 with Martinez. I know Lineker and Shearer have spoken about this as well, and we've got an article up about that. It was actually very good, I thought, to insight from 2, sort of master craftsmen when it comes to finishing, sort of analysing where Dom went wrong in that moment. But I just wonder whether subconsciously, when you see him, he's a bubbly, confident character, but he had that big clash with Martinez last August last year that got him injured, and he missed a big 1-on-1 against Martinez at Goodison earlier this year when it was 0-0, and then he's missed that chance that could have made it 3-1 there. Was that a pivotal moment? You can't pin it all on Dom. There's a lot bigger problems at Everton than Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's playing well. I'm delighted he's still at the football club. But yeah, it was a big moment, and again, but in the end, there was an error and inevitability about it. But still, took an absolute worldie to make the difference.
Just very quickly before I go on to Gav, just on that, because you brought it up, I think we're both of the same opinion. We do like Dom, but is the missed chances on Saturday one of the big reasons why you think he may not go on to that next level as a player in terms of being a world-class striker? Because let's face it, he was through on goal, lacked a bit of composure maybe.
Yeah, I don't think he's at that level like we've seen in the past. Somebody like Romelu Lukaku, certainly he's not at that level, but he's best, and he's by far the best what Everton have got right now. You look at Beto brings the chaos factor, but he's not the same sort of player as Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I suppose he wasn't always an out-and-out striker, was he? When he first came to the club, you didn't know what position he was. Koeman infamously played him at wing-back that time, and maybe that's just he still lacks that sort of poacher's instinct, that striker's instinct in those positions. It was actually very good in terms of Lineker and Shearer and the way they forensically analysed it and said where he needs to go wrong. So maybe even at 27, he could still learn and improve in those situations.
Gav, I know it was a different defeat in a sense, but it was exactly the same defeat in a way to the Bournemouth defeat. I think I described it on Twitter as a twisted, irony. That we've spent 2 weeks, basically being depressed and mulling over the fact that we conceded. Well, we took the 2-goal lead, but then conceded 3 to surrender the lead, and then we go and do the exact same thing again. Extremely frustrating.
In terms of the result, not in terms of reaction. Picking up on Chris's points, Chris just said the same things what he said to you before we were coming up here, wasn't it? That in many respects it would have been easier for Dyche if we'd have got beat 2-0 in a regular, horrible phrase, regulation defeat on Saturday where we competed, and the only thing that's made the difference is Villa's extra class and quality, but we put in a shift, and I think people would have just accepted that. I mean, indeed, on Friday in the pod, on Friday we said that it was more about the performance on Saturday than the result, and actually the performance was okay. I think there was a few players who played well. You mentioned Calvert-Lewin, mentioned McNeil as well, who played well. It was the manner of the defeat is what you're talking about, isn't it? That was the frustrating thing. I mean, we managed to lose 3-2 consecutive games in the two complete opposite ways, didn't we? One was like a short-term catastrophe. The other one was a long-term, I'm trying to think of a long-term defeat, as it were, where we've allowed Villa back into the game and then just suffered for 60 minutes. And they're typical. I mean, if I had a quid for every time I've seen an away team go ahead 2-0 early on in the first half and then get beat 3-2, in my time watching football, it'd be very rich. I mean, City, Arsenal or something like that, always going to hold on, but it's happened so many times, and that was typical, especially in like now where you get so much injury. I mean, they played 7 minutes injury time in the first half, didn't they?
There was quite a bit in the first half.
You had 30 after 30 minutes 2-0, but you're not playing another 60. You're playing probably another 75 minutes. So that plays into it, but. Yeah, we managed a slow death rather than a quick kill on Saturday. But there was a degree of inevitability of that in terms of when you look at the quality between the two teams. Having said that, it's quite obvious where our flaws were. Well, there was a couple of them defensively again. Key moments, not great. And also as well, I think we got overrun a little bit in midfield. As we said, that's going to be a weakness for us on Friday. So 2 defeats, but entirely different circumstances, the Bournemouth and Villa, but equally painful.
Got a stats question for you, which I probably should have flagged up to you before we came in. I don't know the answer, so I was just wondering what it was. What's the most amount of games a team's lost at the beginning of the season and still stayed up? Do you know?
I haven't got a clue.
No, just.
I know Man United had a mad run at the start in the 30s, but losing 4 is not great, but I mean, if we'd had a win, we'd be 15th, wouldn't we? I think some 14.
No, yeah, 15. Obviously the points.
So it's very small margins, isn't it? And which we need to take account of. I mean, last season we got 1 point from first 6 games, 5 or 6 games.
Took Everton didn't win. I mean, nobody wanted to go through this again.
Yeah.
But Everton didn't win until their 6th Premier League game last season, and if it wasn't for the deductions, to finish 11 points with 11th place Brighton. So that's why. Quite rightly, there's going to be a lot of criticism for Dyche and the tactics right now and the players. But no, it's 4 games. It's not the start. It's a terrible start, isn't it? And it's a terrible run. But it's early days, and there's a lot to come, and we'll discuss this after in the coming minutes.
Yeah, I mean, Joe's not on the podcast, obviously, but he did say in his video that perspective is needed. I think. I have been very critical and openly critical on social media. I think obviously I'm entitled to my opinion, but when we discuss it and stuff like that, you do look at it. We have played Aston Villa, top Champions League team, Tottenham, really good team. Did we underestimate Brighton to an extent? Should we have really expected to beat Brighton? I'd probably say yeah, but they've obviously had a good start to the season as well. The Bournemouth game, we're always going to harp back to this. It's the Bournemouth game where, like you said, if we had 3 points out of the 4, we'd probably be 15th. It still wouldn't look good, but at least then we could say, well, at least we're off the mark. And now the pressure's obviously on. It wouldn't be on as much if we got the first 3 points.
The difference being, and Chris, I didn't go to the Bournemouth game, as you know, but Dyche said it was a freakish result, and it was a freakish result, but it wasn't a freakish defensive performance by Everton in the last 7 minutes from what we've seen against Bournemouth and what we saw on Saturday. That's the two things that are in common. It wasn't a freakish performance in that, actually. It's not as if we've defended well all year and we lost it for those 7 minutes. Yeah. It was, what you saw against Bournemouth was exactly what you saw really against Villa on Saturday, just different circumstances. Players who should know better, making key defensive errors, different players at key moments, and it happened against Bournemouth and it happened against Villa on Saturday, didn't it? Really, where for two goals we were not great. Not great defensively would be the understatement, and that's not the freakish thing, is it? Really, and that's the worry for me. From if you take them 2 games and the fact we've conceded, is it 13?
13 and 14.
Did you see Belega's stat in the Times this morning that Pickford conceded 3 goals, at least 3 goals from four times this season. Playing for England in 70 games, he's only conceded 3 goals twice. Yeah. And that just shows you where the problem is. It's quite obvious when you see our results. It's the defence, isn't it, really? And Pickford's not covered himself in glory either, has he?
Well, is that a shock to you then, considering how good defensively we were last season? I mean, we've got our main, best defender out of the team.
Branthwaite's been missing, hasn't he? I mean, we ended up in the first half, one first choice defender out of 4 on the pitch, playing the midfield at the right back and 39-year-old as swap wings during the course of the game. Got Michael Keane there as well. That's not really a surprise, is it? It's just those key moments being switched on, and we just haven't done that in the last 2 games. That's the frustrating thing for me, as I say, and it'd be interesting to see what happens going forward in terms of what he does defensively.
Is it just the case then for you, Chris, of Branthwaite coming back in the team and shoring things up? We obviously know his talents. We obviously know how good he is. Maybe he's even better than what we originally thought.
Hopefully. The thing is, I was speaking to Richard Dunn last week, who's obviously a highly experienced Premier League centre-back, and he said, any team in the Premier League is going to miss Jarrad Branthwaite. He's that good. That's why Everton were well within their rights. When Manchester United came calling twice this summer to say, we value this player in the region of £80 million and left-sided as well. Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't miss him? Like I said, can't just say that, but hopefully it will make a big difference. Obviously, he came in the start of last season, and Everton went on to, I think, only Arsenal kept more clean sheets than Everton, and that's like, as Gav says, that's why it's so sort of strange for a Dyche team. For better or for worse, you expect certain teams with Dyche, and then that is a defensive resoluteness, a sort of mental strength as well, and they've both been lacking. I think at times, poor Michael Keane seems to get a bit more stick than what he deserves in terms of large sections of the fan base. Is a bit unfair, but unfortunately, he always seems to be at the scene of the crime, whether he's covering other people's tracks, and he's the fall guy for it all. But it's not a good look if you take that snapshot. He's got Ollie Watkins, who's a smaller man than him, towering above him for that header, and it was Keane was like the last man when Jack Harrison shanked that clearance towards Watkins for the equaliser as well. It was Watkins who got to the ball for him. Perhaps like everyone, your teammates have got to help you, and he's not being helped by his teammates. But it's not a good look for him, and it's just from going from that defensive resoluteness last season. I mean, if you think of the way they finished last season, obviously still haven't won away from home since Burnley in December. That's something that needs rectifying, because they had all those away wins early last season. It's been 9 months now since they won away from home, but finishing last season with 5 home wins on the spin and 5 clean sheets, and then to go from that to leaking 13 in 4 games, it's not good. So let's hope it is just Jarrad Branthwaite. But for me also, there's a right back, the full back areas. David Ornstein's a very well connected journalist, and he said that Everton had a chance of getting Kieran Trippier before the window closed, and he wanted out of Newcastle United. Personally, I would have thought he was ideal. He can cover on the left as well, where Everton don't really have a lot of cover. But as well as they did bringing in those 8 new faces, that could be one that hurts them, because it's almost like they're trying to cover that area of the pitch, sort of like by committee at the moment, without having any sort of one outstanding individual.
You would have thought wages would have been an issue with regard to that.
Maybe it was. Maybe that's what it was ultimately.
Gav, Chris has brought up Michael Keane. Is there a case for defence for him from your point of view? I mean, Chris has literally just said that criticism may be over the top, arguably, but he is always at the scene of, of the crime when we've got issues.
Not necessarily this season, but he was on Saturday, wasn't he? On 2 occasions. I think the first one people have spoken about, so I'm not going to add to that. It was a dreadful piece of defending from an experienced Premier League centre half. There's no way that goal should go in. But the second one I thought was equally poor. I mean, why is Watkins a yard or two ahead of them when they're heading towards, the Everton goal? And it gives, Harrison. It was unlucky, Harrison, in that normal circumstances when he said yesterday, by the way, best cross he's put in all season. Mischievously should add. But Harrison, when he knocks that cross, you should expect somebody, an Everton defender, to be centre half, to be there to challenge. But Keane's like a yard or two behind Watkins. So as much as it was Harrison's error in some respects, it was completely compounded by Keane switching off. And so I thought he was equally culpable for the second goal as what he was for the first. Having not necessarily been a major weak spot in the first 3 or 4 games of this season, but he was on Saturday. The concern I've got is about Branthwaite is there's a big assumption out there, isn't there, that Branthwaite will come back in, we'll surely defence up and we'll go back to where we were last season. But when he came in, what game did he come in last year? Was it
Wolves?
Yeah.
It was Wolves.
Is when he came into a team that defensively was far better off last year, I think, at the start of the season than what it is this year. Tarkowski is not playing well. Maybe not 100% fit. Mikalenko was obviously had injury issues and went off on Saturday. Right back, we're probably in a worse position as well. Don't think Pickford is playing as well as what he was 12 months ago. So we have to be careful here that we're expecting Branthwaite to come back into the team and everything will be fine and we'll be the same as last year. But collectively at the back, we're not as strong as what we were 12 months ago. And also Sean and Vanana, we've got a bit less cover, in the midfield in front of the defence. So he's going to be coming back to it, I think, a weaker defensive outfit, not just including the back four, what he was 12 months ago. Also, as well, he's got to, he's not going to come back firing on all cylinders, is he? And from a personal perspective, yeah, he's been, he was really good last season, but he's still got to prove himself. He's not the finished article by any stretch of the imagination. He's still relatively young, and I suppose it's a worry that we're looking as a 22, 23-year-old lad to be our saviour. In terms of in picking up results and improving defensively, and that's a concern. So I think we have to be very careful here about what the expectations are with Branthwaite. Everybody else needs to up their game. If they don't up the game, you could have Paolo Maldini coming back into the side and will make a difference. Everybody else has to improve, and that's the concern for me with Branthwaite. It'd be great to see him back, but we have to be careful that we don't expect too much.
So I would just say at this moment, it's not something I can mention now, but we've got an embargoed piece at 5 p.m. today, which offers some clarification regarding Jared Branthwaite and just everything that's kind of gone on in terms of his fitness this summer. But I can't say any more at this point. But hopefully it will become a lot clearer for everyone.
Okay.
And he is back in training, as we've seen the pictures of that already. I can say that.
Someone's just answered me question, John Russell. I'll just go to this comment. So, Ian, the worst Premier League start was Crystal Palace 2017/18. They lost the first 7 games under the ball, and they finished 11th.
Yeah,
easy. There you go.
Okay. Well, it just crossed my mind.
And that perspective's vital, isn't it? Really. Yeah. And
thanks, John.
I remember he was once linked to Everton as well. The ball, wasn't he? He was a candidate.
I think 15th on 2 pointers or something like that. And so we'd won against, I know it's ifs, buts and maybes, is we'd done against Bournemouth, we'd be, outside the bottom three. But it's and maybe a slightly different conversation, but it's modern football, isn't it? There's no way years ago I could ever imagine a manager after three or four games being under pressure. It just didn't happen. You had
Didn't even publish the tables, did they?
Till the third game, and that perspective is needed. I think it's early days. Yeah, we have a reasonably straightforward run of fixtures. We have some winnable games coming up, and we might be looking back in 3 or 4 games time with a completely different angle on things regarding Dyche and the team. But all the players need to up the game, and Dyche needs to up his game as a manager as well.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you just said. I think sticking with defence, Chris, we know Branthwaite's been injured, so he hasn't obviously played at all. It's Keane and Tarkowski that has been the partnership, but we have spent £18 million on a centre back, regardless of whether it's 18 million or not. Right, I know it's instalments, but we've still spent money on what we all thought was going to be someone who could come in pretty much straight away. That's what I thought anyway. I don't know, but Dyche hasn't gone with O'Brien.
No,
he's stuck with Keane and Tarkowski. We'll go on to what we'll probably do for Southampton team-wise, but is it now time for Keane to come out? I fully expect O'Brien to be in that team because it's a cup game tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, but is the Keane? I don't want to say experiments, but is the Keane selection run its course for you, or does it continue?
I don't know. Well, I'll answer it two ways. I'd expect O'Brien to play against Southampton, and maybe depending on what happens there, might shape Sean Dyche's thinking. But based on what I've seen so far from Sean Dyche, I certainly wouldn't be putting the mortgage on Michael Keane not being there against Leicester. I'd imagine in the circumstances he would remain in pole position, rightly or wrongly, to maintain his place on Tarkowski. I say maybe it depends what we see against Jake O'Brien, because O'Brien playing against Doncaster, didn't he? But obviously coming up against top flight opponents if he plays against Southampton. I was just more surprised, all those chopping and changing in the second half at Villa Park on Saturday, and seeing Jake O'Brien as the world's biggest fullback. Dan
Burns pretty tall as well, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, all 6'6" of him, because he was on our side at the pitch as well, where we were in the press box at Villa Park. And I think Joe Thomas mentioned to him, he just couldn't see it. He was just seemed to be towering above everyone else as he surged forward. But it's a baptism of fire for him to come in for his debut. It's one of those, isn't he? And he is very limited in his experience in the Premier League. He never really got a sniff, I don't think, at Crystal Palace. And then he was loaned out to 2 John Textor clubs, Molenbeek in Belgium, and then permanent switch to Lyon before he came back to England this summer. Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I think Seamus Coleman played a pivotal role in bringing him in from what he'd seen with the Irish setup, and let it be known that he thought it'd be a good signing for Everton. Dyche, of course, when the deal was done, sort of laughed at any suggestions it was linked to Branthwaite's future. But time will tell. I think a lot of things with Sean Dyche, like rightly or wrongly, he puts a lot of stock in experience, and he's had Keane from both Burnley and Everton, and he knows what he's about, whereas O'Brien's had to bide his time. But we'll see how he gets on if he's indeed selected tomorrow.
I mean, do you think the criticism has been over the top, Gav?
Of Dyche and Evan?
Well, just in general, like Dyche, the team, where we are. I mean, what I will say before I let your answer is, I would be a little bit worried if the fans weren't annoyed that we'd lost 4 games in a row. I think we'd be in a lot of trouble then if the fans, it was just like acceptance. There was an acceptance of, okay, well, we thought we'd lose the first 3 or 4 games anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Because I feel like maybe that's what's coming from Dyche.
You're getting into Machiri's expected losses here, aren't you, really? Over the top? No, not really. I think it's understandable. Yeah. I think as long as criticism is fair and founded on fact and not abusive, I think it's been reasonable. I think Dyche is not necessarily being judged on the 4 games this season he's being judged on his track record as a manager and his style as a manager. I always say as well that any club that's on a downward spiral like we have been for the best part of a decade, each manager gets the criticism for all the previous managers. It's like a snowball effect.
Yeah.
Is that they're accountable? They become accountable for the overall decline. You mentioned Moyes at the start. Well, since Moyes left, and that includes Martinez and Koeman and I'll throw Ancelotti in there as well, by the way. So he's the one who's subject to the frustrations of fans that have been there for a decade and probably before then, going back to the glory days of the 80s, there I say. So in that context, it's totally understandable, and I think by and large the criticism is fair. I mean, there's nothing that I didn't see at the weekend that we didn't really talk about in the podcast on Friday. The similar thing was on Saturday, the two Villa games and Bournemouth is what we were talking about Friday. Dyche's inability, and he doesn't get tested on this very often, to when the momentum shifts in the game, to react. And to react in a positive way and stop the momentum shift. He didn't do that against Bournemouth, and I'd argue that he didn't do it on Saturday, albeit his resources were stretched and Mikalenko going off and trying to plug a couple of the consequent gaps, didn't help. But I think that type of criticism that Dyche got over the weekend, I think we said on Friday, and I think that's perfectly valid. Where it gets in a bit more unsteady for me is the sack the manager and stuff like that. I get that, but goes back to what we said at the start. You have to, certainly at the start of the season, you have to give time, and and see how it plays out. And so I understand why people say that, but I don't agree with it. But most of the stuff I read and saw was pretty fair criticism of Dyche. And the players as well. Indeed, we just talked about it here, and totally understandable. But he is sort of the poster boy for 10 years of decline, isn't he? Since Moyes' time, and that's where he's vulnerable. Each succeeding manager carries more pressure than the one who went before, and it's the same for him as it was for Lampard and so on.
Where are we up to? I think we'll have a lot of time to bring in questions. We'll come on to the Southampton game as well. What do you think of that, Chris? Then obviously,
yeah.
I mean, before we do that, I mean, without stating the obvious, the next run of league games is just absolutely massive. I'm just really annoyed that we've got to the point now that like Leicester's almost a must-win for Dyche, or Palace is a must-win for Dyche, isn't it? Well, for me anyway.
Must-win, but yeah, the tide has to turn for any manager, isn't it? They're based on the results. I totally echo what Gav said, though. The problem is that managerial churn has got Everton to where they are now. Sean Dyche is the 8th manager of Everton Football Club in 8 years, and the problem isn't necessarily all these managers. It's the fact they keep changing them. And I did a piece yesterday talking about the mentality there. Just so many different managers with different skill sets and different abilities end up looking like patsies because of various incarnations of Everton players. Gav mentioned the great Carlo Ancelotti, who's since gone back to Real Madrid, shown that he's not busted flush. He's won 2 more La Ligas, 2 more Champions Leagues. But, he went from second on Boxing Day to Everton to finishing 10th. Yeah. You've had that. You've had, obviously, Rafael Benitez there, when he came in after him. Make bones about it, Everton were going down under Frank Lampard. I think Everton were heading for their first relegation in 71 years under Lampard. And, Dyche sort of prevented all of that. I just don't think changing what Everton have had so much trauma these last few seasons. They've had the 2 lowest equivalent points totals in the club's history. They've only saved themselves in the final home game of 2 years on the bounce. And then last year they had the 2 separate points deductions. All anyone just wants for this historic season for Everton. It's truly, once in a lifetime season. It's just to avoid that drama. We know it's not going to be a vintage season. There's not really high hopes that there's any sort of going to be glory at the end of it, but just want to keep their heads above water and just keep things ticking over so they can move into that new stadium intact as a Premier League team. So I don't think changing the manager again should be anyone's priority, really. He's got a proven track record, Sean Dyche. I mean, you can't just say, like I said, all managers based on judged on results. You can't just say, well, he did this in the past, but he has shown he can get a tune out of these players, and they're not, a great Everton bunch of players, but compared to what we've seen in the recent past, never mind the glory days. And like I said, level on points based on on-field performance with 11th place Brighton last season. There's every sort of indication that if given the time, he can go again and he can do this, as much as you might like him or dislike him or his attitudes. I see all the same sort of things that people who would criticise him would say, the same flaws. As Gav says, changing things in game and substitutions, they're sort of some of the major question marks against him. But he has proven he can do it. And I think for Everton, it's just trying to get to next May without any more major dramas and just making sure that they can go into the new stadium with everything okay and no sort of panic stations. I mean, to be fair, they got 8 signings over the summer, kept Braithwaite and Calvert-Lewin. I think if anyone had offered you that on the 1st of June, you'd have taken that. So for me, yeah, all managers need to be will be judged by the results, but I think the idea of just changing the manager all the time is what's got Everton into these problems in the first place.
Yeah, okay. I mean, God, the reason I say, I feel like the next 2 league games at least, when I say we've got to get something from them, I just think there's a run of games end of November, beginning of December, where we're playing and like the biggest teams in the league, and we don't win against these teams. So I think my point being is, obviously, December's still quite far away. We know how quick it rolls around. Of course it does, because the games come thick and fast. But what I'm saying is, I think after Palace, it's like Newcastle, Ipswich, West Ham, Brentford. I think
Fulham in there.
Fulham's in there as well.
Southampton as well.
Southampton. So what I mean is, obviously, there's still a whole host of games before that. But I just think he's got to show something in the next 2. We've got to pick something up in the next 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't say it's must win on Saturday. It's certainly must not lose.
I think I'd be happy. Well, accept the points.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, if you'd offered us 4 points in the next 2 games, you'd be snatching people's hands off, wouldn't you? Really?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's where the pressure is between now and the end of middle end of November, isn't it? Really, to pick up points, and that's when we judge the manager. I mean, by the way, you can't be negative about things. We beat Liverpool last year, didn't we? Goodison, so they're not necessarily we'll lose them games. They're just historic games that we don't win, but we can still pick up points. But yeah, this is where this pressure point, isn't it? The next 6 or 7 games, and really that's really got everybody needs to up their game for that. I think the other thing as well, Chris, you were there on Saturday. You probably saw a closer hand than what I did. Is we do have a problem midfield, don't we? When Decore doesn't play as a 10. If McNeil plays there, we lose that extra body, don't we?
It's finding that balance, isn't it?
Yeah,
because,
Decore 4 back, so we've got 3 in midfield. And on Saturday, McNeil ironically he mugged Onana, didn't he, for the goal. That's an issue for us. We can play through our defensive midfielders quite easily. Erebuenum's inexperienced. Garnegay is probably too experienced at the moment. He looks. We haven't got a natural number 6, as we've not had since Delph, and that was another area of concern for us. We're saying that's why the defence looks more vulnerable. So that was that. Did Erebuenum and Gay make 25 passes between them?
Well, Michael Ball was saying, I think Michael Ball was telling me that Ross Barkley came on at half time and he made more passes than the entire Everton midfield.
During the entire game, yeah. And so so it's not we're talking about the defence, but going back to saying it's that midfield line in front of them that we need to sort. And I'm just wondering whether I know probably a backward step is whether if Doucouré's fit and available, whether go back to the tried and trusted at some point, will he'll end up playing Doucouré again as a behind Calvert-Lewin and just trying to shore up the midfield. Because as much as he got criticised last year, there is a bit of an undersized elephant in the room, isn't in the midfield at the moment, I think, to a degree.
I don't disagree with you, but our best results came when Onana wasn't in the team.
Yeah, but as defensively and as a physical presence.
No, so what? I'm not disagreeing with you. So what I'm saying is, are you quite surprised then that Iraboum, despite all of his positives in the first couple of games, because let's face it, he's been one of the bright sparks, but defensively wise, he's quite clearly not there, as you've just suggested. Are you surprised then that Dyche has kind of just not thrown him in? He's obviously put him in the team. Yeah, is the scope for Doucouré to be in the team, but further back, a little bit deeper?
Well, Garner's the obvious point, isn't it? Reference point, isn't it? Garner's obviously he's back in the first team squad. I'd get Garner. I don't know you, Chris. I'd get Garner back
James
in the team.
Garner,
back in the team straight away there in
rather
in
than right back where you to go. Start off and
he was. I think he was a little bit not out of his depth at right back, because we know he can play there and he can do a good job, but it's quite clear that he hasn't played there in a while, and the space that he left for Dean to get the cross in for one of their goals, it's I'm not criticising him.
That's the classic thing when you're playing somebody. I've seen it quite a few times. Somebody in midfield, or even a centre half playing with full back, they will just revert to type, won't they, during the game? They'll just move to their natural position, i.e. they will naturally get dragged towards the centre of the pitch, not out wide. And I've seen that with centre halves playing full back as well. And that, you saw that on Saturday for the first goal. Garner had drifted to a position where he would possibly, you'd expect him to, if he was playing midfield, I think, to a degree. And that was an awkward substitution for him, wasn't it, on Saturday, to come on in those circumstances against Villa. He was always going to struggle, I think. Yeah. But I'd get him back in his best position in front of the defence as soon as possible.
We're getting questions on it then, so I'll ask it now. What do we do with the right back situation? And if Coleman's not fit, it just seems like it's an absolute mess. Yeah. For me, Ashley Young, for all of his qualities and his entire career of being a top player, he's not good enough anymore. I think he actually did okay, to be honest, at left back.
It's right back where I think I have most concerns. With Young, he's fine as a defensive-minded wide player in midfield, and maybe when he's on the left side, he reins it in a bit more because he's right-footed. It's when he's at right back and he thinks he roll back the ears and bomb forward. I think that's when you possibly have the issues with Young. But I go back to my point. It's like they're trying to do it by committee. I mean, I guess if he was fit, maybe I was going to say would Patterson even be first choice, because Dyche didn't seem to fancy him last season. It would seem that he would still be Coleman, but yeah, he's like so many options, but Coleman, nobody's sort of making the position their own.
He only played 7 games in the league last season, so it's not as if he's an actual massive miss. It was Godfrey and Young who played majority of right back for us last season.
Godfrey, natural centre back.
Is Godfrey a player we're missing, by the way, his versatility, centre back and right back?
I don't know.
I know he got money for him. I got money for him, so I'm just. He was an option last year. I thought he did okay last year, Godfrey, to be honest with you.
Didn't you do a piece the other week that he was maybe going to leave on loan?
It wasn't me, it was Matt. But apparently he hadn't. I must admit, I've not been monitoring his movements in Bergamo closely, but I believe he hasn't made the greatest of starts over there from what I hear.
From the piece, he wasn't following tactical instructions correctly. I don't know whether things are getting lost in translation on the training pitch or what.
Tough environment going to Italian football from here if you're a youngish lad. Yeah. Different culture completely.
Okay, about 44 minutes into the pod, let's go on to the Southampton game, because I think the biggest plus out of all this is that we've got a game straight away. Let's get a win, let's put it to bed, and then move on to Leicester. Southampton obviously in a bit of a same predicament as us, down at the bottom of the league. Be interesting to see how strong they go, Chris, but what do we do? You've wrote a piece this morning saying Dyche expected to ring the changes.
And we've got another one coming up later in which we'll have quotes from him in terms of saying that himself, in terms of how he's looking at the game. But I mean, we've got to hope that it's an opportunity to, like you say, coming so soon after Villa, a home game against Premier League opponents, and that opportunity to get that first win against top flight opponents. Of course, it could go the other way and make it even worse, but now you've got to hope that there are a lot of players on the fringes of that team who probably do need minutes. So you could shuffle the pack without necessarily weakening. It's not like you're going to play the kids or anything like that. We've mentioned already Jake O'Brien. He could slot in at centre back. Jesper Lindstrom, who I saw playing alongside Beto in the Bristol Street Motors Trophy at Tranmere. Obviously laid on Beto for the second goal. He'll be chomping at the bit, wanting to get a chance for him. I think there's actually a lot of scope in midfield to sort of shuffle the pack. As Gav's just said, James Garner can come in. Mangala as well. Decore, whether he plays as a deeper role or reverts to that sort of 10, or there's a lot of scope for changes. And of course, you could also bring Beto in for Calvert-Lewin. So there's a lot you can do there without necessarily sort of really weakening the team, and hopefully get some minutes to some of those players who could benefit from that.
What about you, Gav? It's almost a bit of a distraction, this, but it could be a welcome distraction if we win the game.
Yeah,
do we go strong? He's got to find that balance, hasn't he? Because you don't want injuries getting picked up.
It'd be interesting to see what their priorities are as well. Southampton, there's a little bit less pressure on them probably tomorrow than Everton, especially Everton being at home. Yeah. I think tomorrow I'd like to see Begovic come in for Pickford, by the way.
Okay, interesting one, given that he's currently number 3. Yeah, but he's done that in the past.
What about Joe?
Joe Virginia. Yeah.
No, I think I'd like to see Begovic given.
No,
yeah.
Joe Thomas won't be happy.
No chance. Yeah, I told you to be back, didn't I, Begovic? Yeah. I think that was a bad mistake letting him go. I just like to see Begovic or Virginia instead of Pickford.
Okay, he's had a tough start, hasn't he? He's not in form at all.
I'd just give him a shot across the bows. To be fair, because he played against Doncaster, didn't he? Pickford.
Yeah, Pickford played all the Carabao Cup games last season, but then Virginia played the FA Cup.
I'd like to see that. But Chris saying that there are options. There are people. O'Brien needs to play, doesn't he? Would you say? I thought he did okay. I think he did okay on Saturday in difficult circumstances. I think Garner needs to play. Calvert-Lewin, I'd keep Calvert-Lewin on the pitch. Yeah, I think if he's a bit of a streaky player. I'd give him an opportunity to carry on. So there are some options in some areas of the pitch, but and others we're still putting stick and plaster, aren't we? Left back is going to be. Will that be Young again, will it? Possibly.
It makes me wonder whether, so I wonder maybe Roman Dixon even at
right back, yeah.
A lot of people saying in the comments there. Michalenko was ill.
Yeah, it was weird. I wasn't in that because I was down with Dwight McNeil in the mix zone, where I must add, it's interesting because we didn't write about this. All the French-speaking players were down there. Amadou Onana was down there with Idrissa Gueye. Idrissa Gueye's 2 young sons were running amok down there as I was typing away. I don't know if anyone saw them on the lap of appreciation at the end of last season. They were a bit like their old man. They were kicking everything in sight, and some fella came with a tray of food at one point. One of them sort of went after that just yet, but Luca Dean was down there, so that was all going on. So I was down in the mix zone, so I wasn't in Dyche's press conferences. But he said illness rather than injury, Mikalenko, which I don't know, he looked injured to me, but Dyche said it was illness.
In terms of my team, I'd definitely bring O'Brien in. I wouldn't be too fussed if Pickford starts, but it would be, if he wasn't, it would be Virginia in for me. I was really confident in how he performed for us in there.
Are we confident Virginia's number 2, by the way?
Well, he's number 2 in that he's on the bench at the moment, but like you say, Gav, whether say if Pickford got injured or something, it would be an interesting call. Wouldn't it?
It'd be interesting.
I think Begovic has maybe been brought back for more than just make the numbers up. I think to be fair, either way, I think I'd give Pickford the rest.
Lindstrom would come in for me, Garner and Mangala as well. Decore probably gets in there, and I wouldn't be too fussed if Beto did get a start, because I don't want to. I know what you mean about Calvert-Lewin being a streaky player, and when you brought that up a couple of months back, it came to fruition. I always agree on that, but it wouldn't bother me if Beto started, because it's an option off the bench if Calvert-Lewin could come on. You're always worried about fitness with him and injury, and it's, in a way, Saturday's kind of maybe more important than tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Predictions then, before we go on to comments to finish off. Chris's face there, do I have to?
Wow. Let's think about this. They're struggling to keep a clean sheet, aren't they? I'll say 2-1 Everton.
2-1.
2-0 Everton.
I was going to go 2-0, so I'm going to copy it and go 2-0. I think That's fair enough.
Well, given the start they've had, that's all pretty positive, really, wasn't it?
That's because Michael Keane's out of my team. Sorry, Michael. Okay, well, let's go with some questions. So John Russell says, this wasn't all on Dyche. However, he does take training and pick the team. Keane isn't working, it's clear. Garner is not a right back. Not bringing in a left back could be an issue. Problem after problem.
Yeah, there's a lot of good points. I think it is. Keane does get unfair criticism at times, but yeah, you can't really argue with a lot of those points, especially the one about the left back. If anything does happen to Mikalenko, hopefully it is illness rather than injury, because you do worry after that. He's had problems ever since the derby, hasn't he? He was desperately trying to get fit for Ukraine in the European Championships, and he blew up a couple of times then. So let's hope it is just like an illness rather than injury, because I'm painfully short of options in that area.
I know. Sorry, before I go on to more questions, I know he's trying to cement himself as the number 10, but as a makeshift left back, left wing back, could McNeil do a job there?
He could do, and that's the issue, because you'd be losing his creativity. A fellow stat man of yours, Gav, EFC Stato, came up with one today, and he said that, I don't know the actual numbers off the top of my head, but he said that McNeil had created more chances and more big chances than any other player in the Premier League this season. So that's a dilemma, isn't it, if you stick him at left back?
Yeah. I mean, set pieces are, once you've got to take set pieces out of that, though, haven't you? That's one of the things. Players who do the set pieces all the time. This is the thing, always at the top of them lists. Albeit, but
he could have had more, and if Calvert-Lewin had taken his chances.
Absolutely. And they're always a bit misleading, those stats. But you're torn three at the back then, though, aren't you? If you I've played McNeil as a wing back. I don't think you could play him as a left back and a back four, really, because I think that's a completely different thing, isn't it? It's a bit of an awkward brand, but he can play left back, can't he? To be fair,
yeah, he did. Well, I think
going back to the original quote, I think they're all fair points, aren't they? Yeah. I wouldn't disagree with any of them.
Mr. Russell,
yeah. Paul Galt, Gav says, for me, Dyche has got 2 games to save his job. Needs to win both games. I mean, you probably touched on it earlier, but
no, he needs to not lose both games.
Not lose.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris, interesting one. This I don't know whether two-wheel Lucas. Question for Chris.
Okay.
Difficult or interesting questions are usually asked off camera at the press conferences. Why is this?
If people don't understand how it works, I think Joe's talked about this a lot. What you see when you go on when you see the YouTube footage or whatever, that's called the top table stuff, and that's a set list of broadcasters by rights. I think Sky Sports usually go first. The BBC get a question in there, people like that, and the actual questions, it's usually Joe. Sometimes it's myself. The Echo and the people from the national from the national newspapers ask, they're always off camera, so they're the ones in what we call the breakout section. So if you don't like the questions that are getting asked to Dyche when he's up in front of the cameras, well, that's not us, that's other people. So like I said, whether it's Joe or myself or anyone else, that's in the breakout. So you never actually see that until what is usually an embargo time. Well, it's always an embargo time afterwards now.
I think that's a fair point, isn't it, really? I had a conversation about this last week, and people think, Dyche gets an easy ride in the press conference, but that's like the broadcast media, who are rights holders, who come at a different angle to people in the press, because it's in their interest not really to upset the manager in the public.
You've got to get something out of it for the cameras.
You've got to get, because you're relying on access rights and stuff like that. You broadcasters and the press, in terms of question the manager, come from 2 completely different angles, really. Yeah. So overall, Dyche doesn't get, or any other manager doesn't get an easy ride across the piece, does it? Yeah. Do they? But what you see on YouTube is not really a reflection of the questions that the manager gets at press conferences from start to finish.
And you want as a journalist, you want your content that you write to do well. You've got a whole host of questions, I'm sure, in your head, that I'm sure you're hoping that the journalists before don't ask. Yeah. So when you speak to Dyche, you know that you've kind of got that, that content, those quotes to yourself, and you can publish
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, it's very different, and I think it's a fair point because as an outsider, as a viewer or a reader, you wouldn't necessarily know that. So to actually understand how it works, and yeah, it's a very different environment once those cameras are off.
I mean, to be fair, there was some good questions on the broadcast side. Not denigrating.
As you say, it's just a different type of question.
It's a different feel to what it is with the written press afterwards.
Gavin Cunningham has said, why doesn't he start Dixon over Young, as well as give him time? He's had 5 wins since December. How do we respond to that?
Two separate questions.
They are. I thought I'd put them together.
Well, they'd have to ask the manager that. Maybe in the embargo section on when's his next presser? Is it Friday? Is it? Yeah.
Well, it'd probably be Thursday. Usually does Thursday, doesn't he?
Yeah, because we're away. Probably because he trusts Young's experience more. It's simple as that. Whether that's right or not, that's to be seen. Young's okay, wasn't he, when he went to left back? The second question, what was the second?
About 5 wins.
Yeah, well, that's but those 5 wins kept us up, kept us, I say mid-table, as Chris alluded to before, and gave us a positive end of the season. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But the issue is here and now, isn't it? Really, not since I guess since December. Is what are the problems now, and how are we going to rectify them? And that's where Dyche needs to work a lot harder than what he has done at the moment, and saying his in-game management needs to improve. I mean, our away form has been dreadful in that time, though, to be fair, hasn't it? We've not won away since Burnley, which is December. I think it was 14 Premier League games without a win. Yeah. That's a sign of something. If you're the manager, you've got to change a few things here away from home.
So you talk about Calvert-Lewin being streaky. That was the thing at Everton's form, wasn't it? It was streaky. It was all boom and bust. A record-breaking for the club, winless run in the Premier League. Didn't win from Christmas to Easter. It was all truncated. With another hope for the season, as long as a desire for everything to just be less dramatic. Also, I guess for the points to be accumulated over a more steady period, wasn't it?
That's a sign of more stability, isn't it? Yeah, I was going to... So I know you got time. We were talking maybe about this season, and we were saying, well, we got 48 points last season, gross, as it were. Do the same this season, we'll be fine. But actually, it wasn't 48 points where we won 1, drew 1, lost 1. We got a certain consistent level of performance. It was based on 2 sort of big offensives, wasn't it, really? The 8 wins in 12, was it, before Christmas? And those 5 away wins.
The 3 in London as well.
5 home wins right near the end of the season. You're not going to do that this season. You're going to have to do that, be a little bit, be consistent, because you're not going to... I can't see us winning 8 games out of 12 at the moment, especially our run before Christmas. You want a more consistent level of performance, and that's what Dyche didn't have last year.
Yeah, it was all
and he's been like that as manager. When Burnley got into the Europa League 2017-18, finished 7th, they had a 13-game run then without a win. Wow. And so, as people have said elsewhere, Dyche is a streaky manager. But yeah, the problems in here and now, not since December, that need resolving, but our away form has to pick up, and he's got to be specific there, because that has do specific changes, because that's not worked since December, has it, really?
Do you think if Dyche didn't have this, run of games like you've just said there, where like Chris said, boom and bust, and it's like we've got like 4 wins there, 8 wins there, and then 4 wins, but then we had 13 games unbeaten.
Absolutely, yeah.
If this was kind of a new thing for Dyche under Everton, would you be a bit more concerned, or are you basing everything?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
On
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's shown in the past. It was shown twice last season, probably a little bit when he took over from Lampard, that he can pick things up off the floor and kick on. But that's always a bit of a risky proposition, isn't it? At some point, it may not happen.
Yeah.
And so going back to your point, yeah, that is a bit more worrying that we're relying on us to now pick up and go on one of them runs. Well, that relies on a lot of things to be aligned, doesn't it? To quote one of his favourite words, include and get the defence sorted.
Okay. Final remarks, Chris, before we finish off. You and Joe you're going to be working at the game tomorrow, covering the game for the Liverpool Echo. I'm going to be there. Are you there, Gav?
Yeah, I'm punter tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm making the most of the last season by going as a specky for the League Cup.
So are
games.
you in a different stand then, Gav? Or
I'm in the main stand tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah, so I did that same for the Doncaster game.
Very good. So rally and cry, Chris.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been really painful, hasn't it, for Evertonians to start the season? But hopefully, those sort of pieces of quality they've shown in parts of games, they can sort of take that on. They're going to have to, aren't they, to over the piece, over a 90 minutes. It will be 90 minutes. No, we don't have extra time anymore in the Carabao Cup. Don't we? Straight to penalties if it comes to that. But yeah, it's fine. They've been trying to find that balance, haven't they? Of trying to become a bit more expansive. As Gav says, I mean, you maybe lose some of that, and if you've not got that protection in front of the back four, so it's been finding that balance. Let's just hope that they can get that monkey off their back. And I know obviously they beat Doncaster, but beat another Premier League team, and hopefully take that into the, as you say, which is a huge game now at Leicester City at the weekend.
Gav, I've got a really positive comment for you here. James Evans says, Gav Buckland is the only reason to watch this podcast.
Oh, thank you, James.
What does that say for me?
Well, no.
Do we know?
It's a very good podcast.
Do you know James?
No, I don't, but I should do, shouldn't I, really? I get, when I'm out and about, there's people who's saying stuff who are always very, positive about the podcast, and we get a few... quite a few good feedback, don't we, on social media and stuff.
Gav's personal fan club.
Yeah, well, that's thank you, but it's a team effort, this, isn't it?
We're going to have to up his wages, aren't we?
Yeah.
Start giving him more cups of tea when he comes in.
I just had one final thing to say. Gary Shaw died yesterday. Yeah. Villa player, young player of the year of 1981, won the title, European Cup winner with Villa. And as an age when that was my age of 40, that was very sad to hear. From people of your own generation who pass away, it always hurts a little bit more. And Gary was a great player as a young kid. Got injured and then never kicked on. But it was just that was just sad news for me personally, and most people, and Villa fans obviously, but quite a few people are non-Villa fans, and thoughts with his family and Villa supporters, and that was just sad news to hear yesterday. He was a really, really good player, Gary.
Yeah, definitely. I saw you put a tweet out.
Yeah. He was a really good player. Low, could score goals, plenty of vision. Great air as well, and it was just very sad news all of a sudden. It only happened in the last week or so, and that was particularly sad.
Condolences to obviously Gary's family and friends. Chris, just before we go then, just those watching live who may have only just joined, just a very quick final plug on Moyes then. David Moyes is going to be he's going to be on the Royal Blue podcast, isn't he?
Yeah, as you're putting that graphic, coming soon, David Moyes.
People can read many things into that. Yeah,
but no, it's already been done. We spoke to him last week. He's guest number 9 on Goodison Park, my home. He's very generous with his time and helped set it all up for us. Certainly speaks very fondly about his long and successful spell as Blues boss. Like I say, the most successful Everton manager of the Premier League era. 9 top half finishes in 11 years after, I think, it just been the one for the club the previous decade. So yeah, we all wish we could have a bit of that just now. But yeah, check that one out, as you say, coming out on Thursday.
I think we're a bit harsh when we say 9 top half finishes. I think we've got to remember most of them were the top 6, weren't they?
Yeah,
so to be fair, he made
4th,
us
5th, 6th,
in his time. He made us the best club outside what was the Big Four.
Yeah.
Then he made us consistently the best club by some considerable distance, by the way, of the people out of the elite. And there's certainly second half of his reign every season. And I think I was thinking of him as a top 6.
Finished above Liverpool his last 2 seasons.
Yeah, first time that happened since the late 30s. But yeah, I think you have a look at his league positions. It was 6th and 5th With a bit of luck, he got fourth. If he'd had a decent striker, this is another day.
We spoke about that.
Well, that'd be interesting to see. Interesting to see what he says about that.
Yeah.
But a lot of time for Moyes as a man and as a manager.
And that is going to drop.
To it.
Yeah, absolutely. That is going to drop Thursday on all Royal Blue audio and video platforms. Okay, we will finish. Please remember to give us a like and subscribe, as always. Support is greatly appreciated. I don't know when we're going to be back, Chris. Are you going to be here Wednesday for a potential pod, or are you?
Yeah, I'm around Wednesday, but well, also people need to remember Wednesday is it's the Kevin Campbell Memorial Service as well. Gav was obviously talking about there about people who went before their time. Yeah, we've got that. So busy day Wednesday as well.
Okay, I've been Ian Croll, joined by Chris Beesley and Gav Buckland, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.